It was kind of humorous because everywhere we went in the home we had rented to stay in, there was reminders that we were in fact on vacation. There were pictures and sayings all over the house. And you've probably seen these kind of things yourself. Love, laugh, live, relax, breathe, smell the sea, be at ease. Life is better at the beach. It's happy hour somewhere. Every single room had one or two of these kind of slogans, just telling me everywhere that it was time to relax and to sit back. In my husband and I day life, I constantly woke up to signs telling me to relax and breathe and take it easy. Because in my day-to-day mornings, my mornings aren't always that relaxing. They're quite busy and they can be stressful. And there could be a time where I would feel either resentful that I wasn't able to live up to this aspiration of relaxing, or I might not get anything done because I was trying so hard to live up to the sayings on the wall. And I couldn't help thinking of this when I was reading this Proverbs of the lady, the capable wife, because she was anything if relaxed. This is a woman who seemed to wake up at dawn before her children to go out and make food, and she kept the candlelight burning all night long. She is a woman who is an aspirational woman, but I find reading about her, I feel lazy. This is a woman who does it all. She farms her own land. She goes out and finds exotic foods to bring in. She wakes up early to make everyone in her household a homemade breakfast. She spends her days making clothing for everyone, and not only does she make clothing for her household, but she sells it. She oversees a staff of people. She's not only involved in commerce, but in real estate. In the evenings, she does charity work. Through all of this, she's muscular and fit. And she does this all with a smile on her face and kind words out of her mouth. Some have compared her to the Martha Stewart of biblical living. This woman who seems to have it all and do it all, and it's just perfect every time. I'd like to be like this, but I'm not quite. I'm somewhere in the middle. And I don't think this woman would wake up and think, relaxing. But she reminds me of a slogan that I had on a workplace once. It said, be like a duck, calm and unruffled on the surface, and paddling like mad underneath. This poem is called An Ode to a Capable Wife in many Bibles. And yet, a lot of biblical scholars have gone back and have looked at this word capable and said, well, you know what? It could actually be translated more as valorous wife. This is a woman of valor. She's not just capable. She is an honorable woman. She is a woman who is spirited and determined and audacious in what she's able to accomplish. And in this way, she should be seen with some of the heroes, the male heroes within the faith. There's also something else about this woman, and I think it might come as a relief to all of you wives out there and all you women. This isn't just for us women. This poem is meant for us all. This is instructions for all of us as to how to live. And we know that because the book of Proverbs, where she is from, is a book about wisdom. In the book of Proverbs, if you read it, it talks a lot about woman, Lady Wisdom. The book starts off with Lady Wisdom, and we heard it read all about her last week, Lady Wisdom, who goes out and tells how it should be. And the book ends with Lady Wisdom as well. And so in scriptures, wisdom is personified often as a female. So this isn't instructions just for us women. It's instruction for us all as to how to be wise. Now, there's something else really interesting about this poem, and that is that it's an acronistic poem, which means that each line of the poem begins with a different letter of the alphabet. And so it's really, if you were to read it in the Hebrew, an A to Z way of how to be wise. Kind of the complete whole way to be wise. And if you want to be wise, you would be, like the poem says, trustworthy, a hard worker, attentive to others, willing to take calculated risks, being a good steward of resources, caring for the poor, prepared for bad times, making God known, strong in faith and dignity, always and faithful. And this is something else interesting about the poem, because if we think of this poem as Lady Wisdom, then her spouse is none other than God. And this is also a trend within scriptures where God is seen as a spouse to the people of Israel. So if we are wise like this, we will be good. It will be good for God, and God will know that he could trust us. Now, over these past weeks, we've been looking at the book of James. And this week, James, in chapters 3 and 4, which we're reading, talks about wisdom. And James, as we know, has taken a lot of inspiration from the book of Proverbs. James uses the word perfect a lot within his book, his epistle. And the perfect that he's talking about is whole and complete. And what James is saying to us in these chapters is, so often we are not able to be whole and complete, like the Lady Wisdom in that A to Z way in which she's able to do everything so wise, because we have divided loyalties. And he talks about two different kinds of wisdom that there are out there. He says that there's godly wisdom. And from the book of Epistle of James, we hear that godly wisdom is gentleness in word and action. It's peaceable, willing to yield, merciful, impartial, and sincere. Godly wisdom leads to good fruits of peace and reconciliation. Now, in contrast to that, there's earthly wisdom. And James defines earthly wisdom as envious, self-serving, disordered, and immoral, leading to bad fruits which cause discord and disunity. Now, it's probably easy enough to say, we all want godly wisdom. Who wants to be envious and self-serving? And yet, if we put that within the context of how these two play off each other, we see that it's so much easier said than done. We know that godly wisdom is concern for others and compromise for the greater good. And yet, how often in our world are we told that you need to look out for yourselves first and to stick with what you know? Godly wisdom advocates treating everyone impartially and without prejudice. And yet, when you look at our world, we seem to live in a world that advocates placing people into pre-assigned categories. It's very easy to do, right? Well, he's a man after all. Oh, woman. Well, I heard he's conservative. Well, she's liberal. So whether it's on gender lines, political lines, racial lines, we tend to stereotype. And we tend to make things go to that simplistic place when we're dealing with people. Godly wisdom is understanding that we are all different and have different skills and giftings, and that everyone should be valued equally. Earthly wisdom, however, creates a hierarchy of skills and honors some more than others. Both are needed in order and more valued in companies than the janitors are. And yet both are needed in order to make the place run and work. And we hear the disciples are coming to this temptation today. They all wanted to be greater, to be seen as on top. No one wanted to be seen as the lesser. And what Jesus is telling us is that we should all be seen as equal, and that the lesser has just as much value in the kingdom of God as does the greatest. Godly wisdom is appreciating what we have and honoring it. And yet earthly wisdom tells us that there's always more to be had, and not only should you want more, but you deserve more too. If you watch any commercials or you flip through ads, this is something that it keeps telling us. That don't be happy with what you have, always go for more. Godly wisdom states that life can be challenging and difficult and requires hard work. And yet, earthly wisdom sometimes seems to say that, well, if you live right, you'll hardly have to work a day in your life. And yes, it may be true that things can be easier if you have some money, but the old adage also holds true that money is never going to buy you happiness. And this is important because we tend, without even thinking of it sometimes, buy into earthly wisdom because it surrounds us, because it's so easy to do. And as James mentions, when we buy into this, we tend to get envious of what other people have, envious of their status, envious of their things, envious of their ability to be firm in what they have. And yet, when that happens, it could take us on a spiral journey away from God. Envy of others robs us of our own joy. It robs us of what we have because we can't be happy with what we have because we want what someone else has. And this isn't just true today. This was true, James was writing about it 2,000 years ago. This is a constant struggle for us as humans. Envy in this spiral can lead sometimes to insecurity too. Because the more we want and the more we look to others and see, where they are and what they have, we begin to wonder, why can't we get what they have? American pastor Stephen Furtick suggests that the reason we struggle with insecurity is that we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reels. And how true is that in the age of social media, right? Where everyone is portraying and putting out just the great things that are happening to them, where you never see what's really happening inside or behind the scenes. And so it's easy to think, everyone else is living such a better life than I am. But there's always something else happening behind the scenes. And this kind of anxiety then could give way sometimes to anxiety and depression, which seem to be on the rise right now, because we go from this idea of others have it better and I want more, to why can't I get more, to what's wrong with me that I can't seem to be as happy or have what other people have. So what James is arguing and telling us is that we are double-minded. And this duality in our desires draws us away from the love of God. We want to be wise and centered and grounded and having it all together like Lady Wisdom. Yet, we also want to be successful according to the world's standards. If everyone else could live, laugh, and love, why can't we? And they all seem to be just able to relax and take it easy. So why can't we with the same ease? Now, what James is not telling us that our desires are out of place and that we can't ever want more than we have. That's not at all what James is saying. But what he is saying is we need to look again to our motives. And James has talked about this before, and this is important to James. What are our motives for wanting more? Are our motives worldly? Do we want more to fit in because others have more and we want to be comparable to them, to be better perceived by others? Or are our motives godly? We want more so that we could serve God better, so that we could assist others to be stronger in character and more God-like. James is asking and telling us that to know this, we should humble ourselves in prayer. We need to do the hard work on our knees to sort out our motives behind our desires. And if we do that, and if we could find out why we want what we want and come to God earnestly with that, God will hear our prayers. Draw near to God, and God will draw near to you. If we humble ourselves, God will lift us up. I know that my everyday mornings may not be relaxing. However, I know that if I trust this godly truth, that if I draw near to God, God will draw near to me, it gives me an everyday confidence that I could relax and trust in God more and more. And that helps me every day in my life. And I hope the same may hold true for you. Amen.